Welcome to Planted, Finding Your Roots in STEM Careers. Journey with us as we navigate the winding path into tree and plant-related careers with professionals who have taken root or are still branching out. I'm Megan Wiesbrock.
And I'm Jessica Turner-Scoff. Today, we're going to be talking about important traits in STEM careers. And joining us is Marvin Lowe, a research assistant at the Morton Arboretum. And we are going to be discussing versatility. So we're so excited to have you here today, Marvin. So what is your favorite part of working at the Morton Arboretum?
So my favorite part is definitely being outside, just because I really enjoy Mother Nature and seeing all the trees and wildlife and plants growing. And when springtime comes, it's really amazing just to watch everything just emerge out of this doom and gloom of winter.
Can you tell us a little bit more about home aquariums, tree roots, and NASA, and how they connect to Marvin Lowe?
When I was growing up, I was really infatuated with aquariums and the plant life that went in them. And then from that spawned like a love for plants in general. And because of that, I started volunteering at the Arboretum, working with tree roots. And with that role, it got me involved in larger projects such as the NASA project. So that kind of is how everything comes together.
Can you talk a little bit more about the NASA project?
Yeah, so the NASA project is one where we had collaborators from NASA scientists who worked on the Challenger.
That's cool.
And yeah, we did a lot of space testing, I would say. So yeah.
On trees.
Yes, on trees, not in space. We were trying to track how these trees were behaving when they were being blown over. And with the technology that NASA has, we're able to track the stresses and strains applied to trees.
Right.
And it was a large project because we had to find some trees that were, we were able to destructively harvest. And at that point, EAB, which is Emerald Ash Borer, has started showing up in our area. So, we picked out a couple ashes. We stripped the bark off, painted some dots on these trees. They look like polka dot trees. And then we put these cameras on them just to track them as we pulled them over with a winch. But it was a great learning experience because I got to see, all aspects of research, and it's really what I enjoy.
So it sounds like you've got a really diverse background, but this common thread of loving plants throughout your experience with your hobbies, with your background. So there's some versatility in that. Marvin, can you just talk a little bit more about what your job is like as a research assistant?
Okay, so like a typical day for me, depending on the season, it varies a lot actually. So, like during the springtime, when trees are starting to grow, or summertime when they're leafing out, we really have to get out in the field and get field work done. Whether that's either like planting trees or taking care of them or installing sensors, it's a very time-sensitive thing because we have such a short season for putting things out.
Can you talk more about the sensors?
Yeah, so we use a lot of technology in our job. Right now, we're starting to incorporate a lot of these like dendrobands, which are like pieces of technology that measure the diameter growth of the trees. We've got sap flow meters that we're installing, which kind of watch the water usage of plants. We also have some soil temperature sensors. So a bunch of things like that where we're using technology in ways in which we can monitor trees.
And so is that technology essentially looking for patterns in when there's a tree or plant event?
Yeah, so we're kind of monitoring the trees and how they're reacting to the environment. So this is one way we can really learn about trees and what they're doing and how they, respond to environmental conditions of what's going on. So like when springtime comes around and it starts warming up, what are the trees doing? Are they growing their roots? Are they, expanding in the wood? Are they pulling water up?
I know you mentioned you started volunteering and working with tree roots. Have you always had an interest in plant science, or what did you think you were going to be when you grew up?
So I've always had an interest in plants when I was young. I kept orchids when I was like a teenager. I went to nurseries all the time with my parents, and I would just like garden. But I didn't really think of it as a career. And then at one point, I wanted to go to school to be a veterinary doctor. And then at some point, I decided I couldn't do that. It was too tough working on animals. And plants aren't nearly as sensitive, I would say. So I kind of made that transition into the plant world.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting that, I think a lot of people don't realize that they can work with plants as a career. And I know that was something that I think I faced, that most of our guests from season 1, that's a common thread. People like to be outside, and they don't realize that this is an amazing option for employment someday. But can you talk a little bit, you said that you were going to be thinking about being a vet. Talk about your education and how that leads to the role that you have now.
Okay, so I originally went to school to study veterinary science. So I did a lot of animal physiology, animal courses. I never even actually took a plant course. So
Really?
That's a little surprising. Most people hear that and they're like, how do you work with plants if you've never done that? Yeah, so an opportunity opened up to volunteer at the Arboretum. And then, after I graduated from school, I was like, I got to go do something. And I started volunteering in my free time. And I saw that, there was a volunteering opportunity. So I was like, I'll go do it. And there happened to be an opening in the root lab. So I started out as a volunteer in the root lab, and I really, loved what I was doing. I was taking pictures of tree roots, and I was digging trees up and looking at their roots all the time. And it was an odd task, but it was also fun at the same time. So that's the origins of how I started.
I think you should talk a little bit about sonic tomography, because that's one of my favorite projects that you work on.
So sonic tomography is an interesting tool. If you listen to the name itself, sonic tomography, it means sonic mapping. So what we do is we take these sensors and we put them on nails that we've tapped into a tree, around the tree, and we send signals from one nail to the rest of the nails. And that gets sent to a computer. And when we finish that setup, this software builds a whole model in the computer, kind of showing, where there's pockets of decay in this tree. It's something where we don't have to destructively take down the tree to analyze what's going on. These different colors represent the amount of decayed wood that we have, with blue being the most decayed. And then we can see in great detail what is happening in that tree. And then we can decide what we need to do.
And the nails don't hurt the tree.
No, the nails kind of get absorbed by the tree, I would say. They, over time, they will just eventually disappear.
It's kind of like getting an inside view of the tree trunk without having to do any, I guess what we would think of as like dissection or anything like that. But you can see kind of what's happening on the inside. What a cool use of technology.
And it has to be really beneficial too in environments where you don't want to cut down the tree, but you want to check and make sure it's not going to fall and hurt anybody.
Yeah, like on a street, if you have a really nice old tree and you don't want to cut it down, sonic tomography is a great way to look at that tree and determine what's going on inside that tree without having to actually harm it.
Can you talk a little bit about how versatility has helped to grow your career over time?
So I would say being versatile has allowed me to take on many different roles. I've been in many different labs at the Morton Arboretum. So I've worked for people in the plant pathology lab. I've worked for soil sciences, the root lab, 2 different root labs. Also the arboricultural research lab. And being versatile has allowed me to adapt to new conditions and learn new things, so I could just apply my skills in different ways, I would say.
And speaking of applying your skills in different ways, I know that one of the first things that we talked about is your love of aquariums. But what our listeners may not know is that you are a world-ranking aquascaper. That is amazing, and I think you should talk a little bit about that.
But our teachers were also interested in your involvement with the Chicago Aquatic Plant Society. And do you have any memorable aquatic or aquascaping experiences that you can share?
Yeah, so I'm part of this group called Chicago Aquatic Plant Society, as you mentioned. We're a nonprofit that we've started up to promote the keeping of aquatic plants, essentially. Mm-hmm. And I would say our group is to help, expand the knowledge. Most people don't know you can grow plants underwater. And that's the whole purpose of this group. People love gardening. They just don't know you can garden underwater. But one of my most memorable experiences would be, I would say, doing live competition. My first live competition, which was in a convention center with a bunch of aquarium people, and you have a set limit of time. I think it was 3 days to set up an aquarium with plants and rocks and everything, and then judges would come by and judge your tank. I think there was about 25 competitors. It's just a really adrenaline pumping event. You're trying to get things in, trying to get plants in place. Everyone else is doing the same thing. You're looking over the shoulder, like seeing how far has that guy gone? Yeah. How much has she done? So it's like, there's a little adrenaline rush, but it's a lot of fun just competing with people and being around people that also love the hobby.
It makes me kind of think of like those cooking shows that I love to watch. Like they've got the timer and you've got to get going and create a masterpiece, but with plants. So it's even better.
Yep. Exactly.
So, you work with trees, you work with, especially with roots and everything like that. But then your passion outside of work is aquatic plants. So, Marvin, terrestrial or aquatic plants? Which one's best?
I'm going to have to lean towards aquatics.
Oh, your supervisors are listening to this.
They're so interesting. I mean, they can grow out of water and underwater. I mean, the best of both worlds.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing I have an idea then as to which family your answer to this next question is going to fall. But we've asked all of our planted guests if you had to pick one, and I know this is hard, but what is your favorite plant?
Okay, so I'll pick a family of plants. It's the Bucophalandras or Bucephalandras, depending on how you want to say it. But they're just so interesting because they've got colors that you typically don't see in a plant. They got blues, purples, reds, underwater, and they got these like nice shiny dots. They're also somewhat of a species of concern in areas of Borneo. So I think it's important to be cognizant of what's going on in our environments.
Well, Marvin, just thank you so much for being here today. I think it's really cool thinking about versatility with your job, with all the research that you do, and it's kind of like the aquatic plants that you love to work with, outside of water, in water. There's just this theme of versatility in this episode, which I think is so great, because it is a really powerful trait that you can have that can lead to a really diverse and exciting career. So thank you so much for being here today, Marvin.
Thank you for having me.
This episode of Planted, Finding Your Roots in STEM Careers was made possible by the Morton Arboretum and the Multimedia Services of College of DuPage. Check out additional resources and bonus content at www.mortonarb.org/plantedpodcast. If you liked today's episode, please like, share, subscribe, and tell us what you think. I'm Jessica Turner-Scoff.
And I'm Megan Wiesbrock.
And join us next time as we continue the journey into STEM careers.